Hello everyone! Today's video is in a way going to be sort of a continuation of the previous video I uploaded. In that video I built an FFR SC1 chassis to fit a Revell 64 Impala body. In today's video I'm going to be modifying the interior of this Revell 94 Impala to fit onto an FFR SC1 chassis. This was another build I did recently for a customer. This body and interior ended up working out really well for this chassis, so I thought it would be a great opportunity to showcase the process I went through to get this kit's interior tub to fit onto this chassis, as well as use it as a way to secure the body. Of course, unless you're using this exact kit, the process of modifying a model kit's interior to fit onto a chassis is going to vary a lot from one kit to another, and some are going to be better and easier to mount than others. But hopefully this video will at least give you some ideas. Before diving right in, I thought it would be nice to take a quick look at this kit and all the parts that are included. I believe this is a relatively recent release by Revell of the 94 Chevy Impala SS. This is a really nice looking kit with everything looking very well molded and having some great detail as well. Of course, not all the parts included are going to be applicable since this is an RC build, but it all looks very nice. All those extra parts could always come in handy for a static model build or for a scale garage or diorama. The body not only looks great, but does not have the inner fenders and firewall molded as a part of it, which is always a nice bonus since those sections usually need to be removed. Instead, the inner fender sections were molded as a part of the interior tub. These sections would be easy enough to remove, however I thought the inner fenders might be able to stay and there still be enough room for the wheels. Another nice thing about this kit is it's a relatively large car and has a lot of room under the hood and in the rear for electronics, which is always nice, especially since I'll be including the interior. So at this point, I already had the main section of the chassis assembled and the suspension built, as well as some custom wheels installed as requested by the customer. I'll be showing the CAD design process for these wheels at the end of the video. Right from the start, this looked like it was going to be a great fit and not require a huge amount of cutting to get the interior to sit where I wanted. It also looked like the front inner fender sections could remain as well. The first place I was going to need to make some modifications was in the rear area to allow enough clearance for the raised sections of the chassis where the lower trailing arms mount. I always like to start by marking the sections and then using a hot knife to make the cuts. I always start with something smaller than what I think I'll need and then gradually make it larger if needed. The hot knife is a nice tool for this since it makes cutting any shape effortless. After just these simple modifications, already the interior is sitting more flat on the chassis, just like how I want it. I wanted to next address the front inner fender sections and see if just a little bit of trimming would allow enough room for the suspension and steering assembly. Although the steering angle is limited some, especially with these larger than stock wheels, it looks like these inner fender sections can remain without any issues. This is awesome as it adds even more scale realism to the car and opens up the possibility of at least somewhat of a detailed engine bay. If the customer decided to remove these sections to allow more room, this could be done very easily and with no other impact to the body, interior fitment, or appearance. I next removed these sections that stick down slightly in the rear so that the interior tub could sit flat on the chassis. I cleaned up the messy looking cut made by the hot knife before continuing. With those sections removed, the bottom is now flush. The interior tub can now sit flat on the chassis. Here the back of the car is low because I was still adjusting the ride height. The interior and body is parallel to the bottom of the chassis. With the interior now sitting how I want it, I installed the steering servo and began removing material to allow enough room for it. Most of the time I like to place the steering servo on the passenger side of the car to prevent it from interfering with the steering wheel, steering column, or anything that's on the driver's side. It's a little hard to know exactly where all the cuts need to be made, so like before, I start small and gradually make the opening bigger until it fits. After confirming that everything fits well, I installed the door panels, dash, and later the seats to see what would need to be done to these parts. I like how the door panels in this kit are separate pieces and have a lot of detail. To have plenty of clearance for the steering servo, I needed to remove a section from this door panel. Like before, I quickly cleaned up the edges by sanding them smooth. I thought I might have to remove some material from the passenger seat to have enough room for the servo, but it fit just fine as is. I noticed that I would need to remove these corners that were preventing the interior from sitting flat on the chassis. Just to ensure that there will be enough room for the servo arm, I removed a small section from the lower side of the dash. With all the cuts I wanted to make now complete, I sanded all the edges smooth. Next, I focused on how I was going to secure the interior tub to the chassis. I'm using the technique I've used previously for the '83 Camaro build. I'll be drilling holes through the bottom of the chassis and interior, and I'll then use small machine screws and nuts to secure the parts together. I started by drilling pilot holes on the bottom of the interior and then made them larger. I positioned the interior and body on the chassis where I wanted and then marked the location of the holes. And yes, believe it or not, this black Sharpie marker shows up just fine on this black chassis. I drilled out the holes where I marked them, and I made these holes a little larger than I needed to allow for some adjustability. Fortunately, it looks like I did a good job with positioning the holes. I next held each piece together using a small M1.6 machine screw and nut. With everything at this point looking good, I used some glue to secure the nut to the interior. The nuts won't be visible since they will be covered by the front seats. With the nuts now glued, the machine screws can now be removed and reinstalled from the bottom. With that complete, I assembled the interior and test fit everything on the chassis. The addition of the full interior and inner fenders adds a lot of detail to the car. As you could see, this kit ended up being a very good choice for this chassis and fit very well without much difficult work being required. I had no problems fitting the ESC and receiver in the rear, and there was enough room for the battery in front where the radiator would go. I'll certainly be keeping this kit in mind for a future build. Of course, not all kits are going to have an interior that's this easy to fit, but with a little planning and creativity, you can do a lot to help make having a full interior possible. I hope this video helps give you some ideas and inspiration. I've finally got some full build videos nearing completion and getting close to being ready for uploading, which I'm very excited to share with all of you. Also, next week will be the second video featuring the Scale 3D RC bodies that I've showcased previously. I'll be announcing the winner of the giveaway in that video, so if you want to enter but have not yet done so, be sure to check out the Scale 3D RC video that I did previously. As I said earlier, here's the design process of the custom wheels I made for this project. I don't know what wheels these are aside that they're made by Rucci, but the design is pretty simple and wasn't difficult to make a smaller scale version of them. The design did have to be altered a bit to allow enough room for the wheel nut and to ensure that they are thick enough to not be too fragile, but the finished result ended up turning out pretty nice. With just a little paint, these wheels would look awesome. I'm not sure if these wheels will be available on our store, unless there are a lot of people who want them. What I'll probably do is just put the STL files up on Patreon for anyone who wants to print a set. Anyways, that's all for this video. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.